Burning Issy, Melvin Burgess, Chapter 6. When Nat learned where we'd been, he was furious. He meant to beat us both, but when he saw how frightened we were, he decided we learned our lesson already. He made it clear I wasn't to see Jeanette anymore and made Gil swear never to have anything to do with witchcraft again. Gil had not seen how Demdike had been flung into the fire and had not been there when she accused me. He told Nat she slipped, but he must have suspected something because I saw him looking anxiously at me as he said it. I kept quiet. I knew it was an evil thing and that evil would come of it. The next morning Demdike came down from the hill to collect me. "The girl is nothing of yours, wise man," she told Nat. She rolled up her sleeve and showed her the seared flesh on her arm. A great blister had sprung up along the whole of her forearm and on her hand. "There's no cures in her. This is the harm she's done. She's one of us. I've come to take her." Nat looked wounded. "If it was harm, it was not intended. There's no spite in our Issy." "She's one of us," insisted Demdike. "You know nothing of her past. We'll have her back." "And what do you know of her past?" demanded Nat. I had told him what Demdike had said about knowing my mother and grandmother. He also knew she was a liar. The old witch stood with one hand on Alison's shoulder, and she lifted her face up to the sky. She always turned her face to the brightest part of the sky to let the shadow of the light into her dark world. She shook her head in the sun. "It's none of your business, wise man," she insisted. "She dreams harm. She's one of us. We've been here longer than you, and we will still be here when you and your church is forgotten, and we will have what is ours. Give me the girl, and we'll leave you alone." Nat shook his head. "You'd make a slave of her. She's not mine to give, or yours to take." Demdike said, "We're all slaves to our master, but our master will do as we ask him. Give me the girl, or we'll visit you." Nat shook his head. "You can't harm me, witch. I don't believe in your charms." Demdike waved her arm at the door where Gil and I were hiding. "Ask your boy what I can do. Ask him what I have of his." She nodded again to our hiding place. "I'll come again. We will have her." She tapped her stick as Alison turned to lead her up the path back to Melkin Tower. Gil turned to me as the witch disappeared up the hill. "She means my mannequin. She has my soul. You have to go with it, Issy, or she'll kill me." "You have to choose between me and her, father," shouted Gil. His face had turned the colour of dead grass. "She's not even our family. She's just an orphan. If she doesn't go, I'll die, father. You have to listen to me." "She can't harm you," Nat exclaimed for the 10th time. "It's nonsense. She's trying to blackmail us. Do you expect me to give poor Issy to that monster because you're stupid enough to believe her?" "But it's true," groaned Gil. "You can cure. She can make harm. Everyone knows it." "If she tries to make harm for you, I can cure you. What's the worry?" "But she has my mannequin. She's trapped my soul. Don't you understand?" Gil was weeping with fear. He really did believe his life was at stake. "A mannequin," scoffed Nat. "Wax and a bit of hair. It's all hocus pocus. All those spells and mannequins and charms and boiled up messes. It's nonsense to frighten stupid children like you." "But I felt the fire," exclaimed Gil. "She held my mannequin to the fire and I felt it." Excuse me. "You felt it because you believed it," said Nat angrily. "Some cunning man. You were born with gifts from God, but you spent so long playing silly games you've come to believe these tricks." Didn't I tell you to leave witchcraft alone? Now you want me to give away your sister to save you from your own stupidity. But I do believe it, so it will happen. Help me, wept Gil. And if it's just tricks, how does she know where I was hiding just now? Tell me that. She knows because Alison tells her. You saw how she stands with her hand on Demdike's shoulder. She taps in one place and it means over there. In another, over there. She gives the girls instructions before she sets out. It's an old trick. I sat by the corner near the fire and watched dumbly as Gil begged for my sacrifice. I felt worn out inside, but strangely removed from the scene as if it were the fate of some other strange girl was being argued out. But how did she know where we were last night, I asked. None of them could have known Nat. Nat had gone to fling more wood on the fire. He shrugged impatiently. Maybe she heard you, or even smelt you, like she made out, he said. They say when you lose one sense, the others make up for it, but I expect Jeanette told her. I shook my head. I'm sorry, Issy. Maybe she's a darling like you. You're a darling too, but you told Gil of her. I felt the truth of that. After all, I was no better than them. I will go, Demdike, if you want me to, I said. She's one of them, urged Gil. She's burnt Demdike. Nat was losing his temper. Your sisters know which, he shouted. It's tricks and lies. You know how these people work. What's wrong with you? Her arm was burnt. I saw it. Tricks. Just tricks, insisted Nat. And if Issy does have gifts, what of it? So do I. Does that make me a witch? Or you, for that matter? But we cure. She brings harm, begged Gil. Harm, is it? He scoffed. Is it harm for her to save a brother from burning? I want to hear no more of it. It is staying. He waved his big hands in the air and went to get a big knife from the hook on the wall. He sat down and began to grind the blade with a piece of grit stone. I need your help today. We're going to butcher a big pig this afternoon. You see? Gil jumped up crying. You see, she knew that too. She knows everything. What's the use? You won't. Listen. He burst into tears and ran out of the house crying. I could hear him wailing as he ran up the garden and down into the valley. Nat sat down on a stool by the fire and rubbed his face wearily. So she knew I was going to kill a pig. So does Harper Pendle, he growled to himself. I won't let anything happen to Gil, I said. He's your real son. He stroked my head. You're a daughter to me. I won't let you go. But what happens if he falls ill? What happens if he dies? He won't fall ill, Nat said. And if he does, I'll cure him. Demdike has bewitched other people to death. So they say, growled Nat. He sighed and shook his head. He believes it, that's the trouble, he muttered. And old Demdike knows it. That night Jeanette came to see me. We had no windows, but she knew where I slept, and I heard her scratching at the walls of the timber and the mud, calling my name. I ran to open at the top of the door, and she pulled herself up, leaning in with her arms to peer in at me. I'm not allowed out, I whispered at her. Nat had been called out to the doctor by Miller Badwin's family, and he left instructions behind. Jeanette stared at me and smiled. It looks as though we're going to be sisters now, I said. Grandmother says you're a real witch to do what you did to her. She says none of the others could have done it, not even Mother. I didn't mean to do anything. I didn't know what I did. I was dreaming, I think, I whispered back. Jeanette nodded. She says you wouldn't have got her if you'd known what a witch you really were, she whispered. She says you belong at Malkin Tower with us, but I don't think so. Well, don't you want me to come? Jeanette, I asked, feeling a little put out. I had been thinking to myself one nice thing about Malkin Tower was that I would be with Jeanette. You don't belong there, she scowled. I used to think you had such a pretty life with Nat and Gil, but now you'll be up there with me and we'll both be miserable. Well, could we run away? I asked her. Demdike won't hurt Gil if I'm not here. She shook her head. If you run away, she'll kill him. But what about you? You can run away, even if I can't. I can't, she whispered. It's too late. They made me a witch. Demdike says I mustn't make friends with Christians any more. Tib drank my blood and took away my soul. Look! She lifted up her arm to show me the mark. A raw scab surrounded by a small blue bruise. I thought of that creature feeding off her and shuddered. I'd have to do it again now, I said. Jeanette didn't reply. We hugged one another. What are they doing to Gil? I asked her after a while. Demdike has a bowl of hot water and herbs, and she seethes him over it every morning to make him sick, whispered Jeanette. Is Gil here? She added, peering past me into the darkness. No, why? I have to tell him, replied Janet simply, and added, you must tell him for me. I remember the Nat said she might have given us away, and I wondered if that's why she really was here tonight, to make sure Gil knew he was being bewitched. Nat says it only works because he believes it, I told her. Perhaps it's not a good idea to tell him. Jeanette thought about this for a moment and then agreed. I had an idea. Listen, Jeanette, can you steal that mannequin for me? I'd do anything for you if you could. But Tib drank my blood, I'm one of them, she repeated. Then she kissed me. I have to go now. Tell me one thing, I pleaded. I felt awful for asking, but I just had to know. Did you tell them you were coming here that night? Jeanette looked at me and said nothing. I babbled on. I wouldn't think any worse of you, Jeanette, because I told Gil I gave you away for the first... Jeanette's little white face looked over at the stable door at me for a long moment, but she said nothing. I couldn't tell if she was hurt or too guilty to admit it. Then she said, I have to go now. She dropped down to the ground and saw her running like a hare through the vegetable garden and away up the hill towards Pendle. Nat returned from his work at the miller's looking grim. Baldwin himself would never permit Nat to treat his family. His wife believed that a cunning man was the only way to fight a witch's curse, and she'd asked him round while the miller was away on business. But Baldwin had only turned Demdike off his land a couple of days ago with a whip. Now he developed pains in his spine, what he called the witch's bolt. Nat could only treat him in person, but if he was able to help his wife and daughter who were suffering too, the newborn baby was in the best of health. As Jeanette had said, poor Alison was not much of a witch. The next day dawned, mild under a dull grey sky. There was a warm, little wind flickering in the thatch, and Nat tried to rouse us to begin to prepare the land for the early seeds. We were taking out the tools when we heard the voices outside. Demdike had returned. Alison led her as usual. James was there, and Lizzie, and a couple of other local witches. It was a powerful harm that gathered so many together. The witches sat themselves down on a ridge above our house, the wind stirring their rags. Nat took me by the hand, led me out to show we were not frightened, but Gil stayed and hid inside. Demdike took the little mannequin from her rags and held it up to be sure that we could see it. James had a little pot out, and soon they had a small little fire going, flickering red flour in last year's old brown stalks. Water was added and some other things, a bundle of herbs and some other stuff I couldn't make out. Now the fragrant smoke of the dry heather stems they used to make their fire was joining up a sickly reek. Part sweet herbs, part some savoury smell like boiled meat, but not meat fit to eat. Over the simmering liquid in the pot they made a little nest of sticks and laid the wax figure of Gil. Behind me I heard the real Gil moan to himself. How's the boy moaning? Jeered Demdike. as well as he is every morning. Demdike stroked the little figure with a finger. He's getting hot, she announced. Soon he'll begin to melt. When the wax is all in the pot, she will be dead. Give us the girl, wise man. Nat did not reply, but came back into the cottage. He sat down to his work table and began to prepare some herbs and medicines. Gil flung himself down on his bed in the corner. Why do they want us so much, Father? He cried. I don't know, he snapped. And I saw him look at me in a way I had not seen him look at me before, frightened and slightly distasteful, as if I were not quite human. For a second I was a cuckoo in a nest, an overgrown monster, draining the life out of my adopted family. Then that fright in his eyes was gone, and he was dear old Nat again. For 2 hours that plume of sweet smoke and the stink of the witch's brew blew around our cottage. They sat on the ridge above us, muttering and mumbling their curses, occasionally shouting for Gil's benefit that the face was dissolving or that poisonous matter was gathering in his eyes. At last they kicked out the fire, carried their things back up to the hill, with a promise that they would be doing the same thing every day at the same hour back at Melkin Tower. In 2 weeks' time, the boy will be dead, announced Demdike. She held up the little mannequin in the sunlight. Already the features were blurred. The next morning, Gil had fever. End of chapter 6.